Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove. I'm the owner of Transformational Solutions, a life coaching business that specializes in addiction, trauma, and self-destructive behaviors. I'm an author, podcast host, group facilitator, speaker, and co-creator of the online 8-week self-development course, the Visions Program.
I'm your co-host, Arthur Mogilevsky, a business entrepreneur, dad, animal activist, and owner of AM Healthcare, California's leading dual diagnosis and mental health treatment centers, focusing on comprehensive and immersive treatment experiences with a network of facilities and dedicated professionals committed to providing each and every client the intimacy of care they so richly deserve.
This is the Got Mental Health Podcast, a fun, open, and safe space where we talk to experts, thought leaders, and professionals in the mental health field.
Our goal is to educate, inspire, and empower people to take care of their mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
Join us weekly to hear Arthur talk like this as we talk all things mental health.
Follow us wherever you go to get your podcasts.
And don't forget to rate and review as it really supports our show.
Thanks, guys.
And keep listening to Arthur. Welcome back, everyone, to the Got Mental Health Podcast. My name is Rachel Cove, and I'm here along with my co-host, Arthur
Mogilevsky, Rachel.
Whatever. Dr. Grant.
And so it begins. I'm gonna like this, and I'm right in the middle. Wow.
Didn't see yourself walking into this one today, did you?
Oh, no. I suddenly, this has become so much more interesting, and I'm right in the, go, guys. I like this already.
Welcome to the Got Mental Health Podcast. Dr. Grant is in the house. Dr. Grant is an internationally award-winning media psychologist, published researcher, doctoral addictions counselor, and educator with specific expertise in technology's impact on mental health. He is also executive director of outpatient services for Newport Healthcare, which recently launched their new PHP IOP adolescent treatment program under his leadership in Santa Monica, California. Don's current research includes investigations of potential effects of social media, cyberbullying, and device-driven attachment bonds on adolescents, teens, young adults, families, and our cultural relationships at large. Whoa.
I know. And every time I hear that, I'm like what you were talking about earlier. I have the student loans to prove most of that still. And it's all legit, but I always sit here and it's like, you have to do it, but I blush. But then I think, you know what? My mother, she should rest in peace, loves hearing it from wherever she's like, keep talking about him, keep talking. So I do it because my mother would love that. But yeah, that's all correct.
And I want to make it clear, that's the shortened version. Yeah. This is a very accomplished human being that's sitting in front of everybody right now. And so, we've known each other, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. I mean, one of the very...
We have history.
We have a good history, obviously.
I know how to pronounce your last name. Too soon? Wow.
Too soon. That was a quick burn. But, we work in an industry where we have amazing humans. We have questionable humans.
We're not doing that one, right?
No, we're not.
Good.
You're one of those people that has a name that is synonymous with wow. Oh. Right? The things that come out from your research, your knowledge, your personality, your ability to connect with people, your ability to create something that hasn't been created, which is one of the main reasons why you're here today to talk about. It's innovative, it's futuristic, it's the present. So I appreciate you coming on, and I know your time is valuable. So I'm really excited to jump into this. And so I want to start off with technology. Mm-hmm. There's so much to open there. Obviously, we live in a technological world where everything or most things happen online. COVID hyperextended that. The next 5 to 10 years is the now. I want to know, first of all, how you picked this to be the field you want to focus on. I know there's a lot there to unpack. And kind of where you see it going.
Thanks, Arthur, and really I appreciate being here and your kind words. I was telling Rachel, there were many years in the early days, I'm talking 2007, 2008, when I didn't know if anyone would care about what I was talking about. Back then, things were new, and I would talk about it, and people would kind of give me the Scooby-Doo, like, so that we're here, it's a double-edged sword. For one thing, I have some struggles with it because of the things I talk about, the things I teach. This is, so that's one piece. But the other piece is I'm very grateful, and so is my student loan company, because I wasn't wrong. Because if I had been wrong about this, as I said earlier, wow, of all the fails in my life, and there have been many, this would have been epic. And I would, but how I got into it, I would love, 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 love to say that this was some Nostradamus, yes, joke on my name, moment that I had. It was not. It was not that lofty. It was not at all. People have asked me, probably more than most other questions, when did we pass the inflection point, the event horizon, with this dependence, this attachment, this thing that everyone's talking about, devices? This is just my hypothesis and my thoughts and opinions. I believe that we crossed the event horizon in 2007 when the iPhone made the internet portable. And that's where it became pervasive across. So that's just my opinion, that I think that the iPhone is the inflection point when this became so pervasive. So why is that important to me personally? Well, because I have 2 daughters who are the loves of my life, have me wrapped, and can basically have anything they want, and they're amazing. They're great kids. So in 2007, one of my little princesses wanted this thing called an iPhone. Now, I'm a digital immigrant, which means I was not raised with this. When changing the channel, in my family with my dad, I was the channel changer. My dad would I'd be sitting on the floor, he'd hit my head and say, go change the channel, and there were 3. I'm a digital immigrant. Technology came into my life at a certain point. But I'm one of the last generations of digital immigrants, but I'm the father of the first generation of digital natives, who are the generations that never knew a life without all of this technology. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, and this is, by the way, on a sidebar, the reason why the stuff that I do is, it's hard. I don't know, quite honestly, and I'm not being cute. If I'd known where this was going to go and how hard this was, I can say that I don't know that I would have done it. I didn't know. But the work it takes, because state of the art in what I do is obsolete by noon. I'm still trying to figure out, what's going to happen with TikTok, what Musk is doing. Every day I spend about an hour, literally, trying to figure out across all the silos. It's not like if I'd studied EMDR or if I'd studied business where things don't really change. It's a lot of work. But I didn't know that at the time. And what happened was, my little princess wanted this thing called an iPhone. Well, I'd gotten her a Tamagotchi. I'd gotten her the little pod. Who knew, right?
Right.
And I got it for her. And something happened very quickly when the kids were back on Facebook before we went on it and they abdicated. Something happened which we now know is a very, very, very subtle form of cyberbullying. All it was that we were going out for an afternoon. I told her she could invite all her friends to come with us, whoever she wanted, to go to the movies and to have a lunch. She invited them all, and they were all busy. Later, we came home, and she saw a picture where they'd all been at the beach and wrote BFFs across it, and she was excluded. And that was the moment where you guys ever heard the story about how gravity was discovered with Newton? Do you know the story? What was the story? How did Newton apparently discover gravity? Do you remember?
The apple.
Yeah. Apparently an apple fell out of a tree, hit Sir Isaac Newton in the head, and gravity was formed. # fake news, probably. However, that's the story. Well, metaphorically, the same thing happened to me. It was an Apple iPhone. And it fell out of a tree and hit me in the head, and I realized I had in my daughter a potential weapon that could hurt her, and I didn't understand that. You wouldn't give your kids a set of power tools.
Right.
So I was just trying to be a good dad, Arthur. I was just trying to understand this thing that I had naively handed my child that had caused her some dysregulation. And here we are all these years later. I get to talk to people like you, and I get to write books, and I get to speak all over the world, and I wasn't wrong, and blah, blah, blah. So I would like to tell you that it was something else, but that's how it happened.
But I don't think you, let's take it back a second. I think that is a revelation, because you actually listened. You paid attention to that moment and was like, I need to come up with a solution or an understanding of how I can help my child and future childs moving forward. Like other parents, or, I'm not saying in general, but in general, you see a situation, you feel bad about it, but there's no solution orientation. There's no like, how can I create a solution so that this doesn't happen, or it happens a little bit less, or we can know how to cope with it, right? Yeah. And so like that's huge. I feel like that is a revelation.
I appreciate that. And I just also want to make it clear, I say this in every time I talk, I am not anti-technology at all.
Of course.
I'm all about it. I use it all the time. We all know, like you said, it's here. I mean, it's only going to get more, and yes, we can talk about that maybe later, of how our confinement during COVID accelerated some of the behaviors and some of the opportunities that may have never happened, or that we thought we were about 10 years away. But this is here. So I am not, and I sometimes worry that, especially when I work with kids, oh my God, not that guy, he's going to tell my mom, take away my Xbox. No, it's not, maybe for now, but we can't evade technology. I am all about it, but I work on, and I teach healthy device management and the practice of good digital citizenship. It's not, I mean, abstinence from technology, that just would be ridiculous.
Right, of course.
So I want to make that clear, that I'm not anti. I just want us to have a really good relationship. This is all new. We're learning this. It's grounded theory, which I hate. I hate when the experiment teaches you. I like very solid theories and things like that. We're all learning. And if we weren't, certainly COVID, when we were so reliant, thank goodness we had it. But it doesn't replace the covalent bonds of in real life and the reactions, and being able to look at Rachel right now and she's nodding her head so I can read her social cues and know that at least she's, somewhat interested, or she's just being polite. And I'll work with that. I want to make sure that we don't forget our humanity. And I believe that connection, human connection in real life, is something that we could be losing. And you don't miss what you don't know.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's what I'm scared of. I'm scared personally because I have a 4-year-old son who is 100% already addicted to his iPad. And it's really scary, and it's sad for me because...
Why is it sad?
Because I see his dependency on it. I see when he feels dysregulated, I watch him seek out the iPad. I watch him seek the comfort and the dopamine release that he gets when he turns on the YouTube. I see his body relax when he gets the iPad. So I already see this relationship to it that is unhealthy. Okay. And I've participated in that. And I think what a lot of parents are struggling with, at least from my perspective, is the technology gives them relief as well. And so I'm like, how do you find the healthy balance? And I have a friend who has 6 kids.
Oh, goodness.
And she's warned me, like, don't let this happen. Because by the time your kid is 11 or 12, like my kid is, one of her kids are, there's something that takes a hold of them. And it does feel like this compulsion and this anger and this anxiety that happens when they don't get it. And I feel like I'm already experiencing that. And I feel like because it's only going to, I don't know, like get worse, or I don't really know what the solution is other than monitoring it, allowing him to feel that anxiety instead of giving him the iPad. It's hard. It's a really hard balance right now because, like you said, everything is on technology, and he's also watching everyone around him on technology.
Yeah, and you're right, Rachel. I'm going to tell you what I tell parents all the time. First of all, we're parents. We do what we do is best. A lot of parents, including my own parents, would put us in front of the television. We used to give I'll tell you, I'm going to tell her myself, my wife and I, the last thing that we would make sure we had when we were going in the car back in the day when my kids were little was the video player. Like, it didn't matter. We could forget everything else, the diaper, but do we have the video player in the movies? Because it's hard to be a parent, and we do need a break. Yeah. So using screens or using whatever it is, we don't know. But the difference that the iPads, when people say this, well, what about televisions? I say, yeah, I put my kids in front of the videos. The difference is that the iPad is interactive. That's what makes the difference, is the interactivity. So how are you going to give a kid a set of blocks to learn tactile, to learn creativity, to learn all of that, once they've seen the stimulation that comes from all of that amazing thing that the iPad gives? So that's where you have to maybe consider introducing. That's why I teach healthy device management, not abstinence. So it's introducing whatever is developmentally correct. whatever toys. Because there's also a lot of things and a lot of videos and a lot of really great resources that are only available online, that are didactic, that are teaching, that can help kids, especially if you have kids who have special needs. You just have to be careful, and you have to be really on top of it and monitor it the same as you would not let your kids probably watch a television show back in the day that was, they used to say after 10 o'clock, you want to make sure that whatever content is being delivered is age appropriate, but also make sure that there's a balance, the value of, and I'm making this up because my kids played with Legos and blocks and things like that, making sure that the value, and how do you do that? If I said to you, and I gave you a little clue, it's tough what I'm asking, but it'll be valuable. If I say to you, the difference is that the iPad is not like a TV screen, that it's interactive, how might you be able to balance it when you try to rip that iPad from their hands and they start screaming and try to introduce more of a more traditional or a toy that's not? How could you maybe make it interesting for the kid and also have a valuable experience for you and your child at 4 years old who's in the attachment stage? How do you think you could do it?
So just so I'm clear, you're asking how do I make the iPad interactive?
No, if you're going to take away the iPad, which
Right.
I gave you the clue is interactive,
Right.
and then you're going to try to convince them why I'm making this up. I sound like a set of blocks, some Legos, some figures to expand creativity and make it interactive. And then have the secondary gain of experience, bonding, and help with the secure attachment bond. How might you do it?
Well, I could give the example I did last night. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it felt like we were in a very good connection with each other. I said, I'm turning the iPad off.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him a warning. I let him know it was going to come soon. And then once I turned it off, we took his little cars out, and he suggested it and wanted to color his cars. And then we went and played Frisbee.
We played Frisbee. Okay, you did that perfectly, and this is what I recommend.
It's like I'm all
Always, very well. Like, that was impressive. Always parents, especially when the kids are that young, have another activity. You cannot try to take away. It's like a zero-sum equation. You can't remove something from one side, even if it's unhealthy, and not replace it with something of equal or greater value. You create a vacuum. You have the next activity already set up. Interactive is the we. Parent, play with your child, whatever the next activity is. Engage with your child, whatever that activity is, and use that time to spend quality time with your kid, because you didn't just have it when they were on the iPad. You weren't spending time with your child. So you did that perfectly. Have the next activity set up, have it be something that is, you can both do together. And that's how you balance it, and that's perfectly fine. What it doesn't work is when you pull away something, a device, especially from a child that young, have nothing in place. You're frustrated. You get more frustrated. You want to just give them back the iPad, or you don't interact with them. So playing, you've had your break while they're on the iPad. It's fine. It's my parents putting us in front of the TV. But then what you did was perfect. That's exactly what I suggest to parents. Well done.
So
you don't need me. I can just leave now. She's got this.
Yeah, you're good to go. That's the end of the podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I'm hearing is all about balance.
Mm-hmm.
Live within, but learn to live without.
We have no alternative.
Right. Because I think that listen, we're a day and age of technology. If it's used for the right purposes, can help expand and grow. And it's amazing, right? It's something that we shouldn't just be like, well, we're done with it, which I love that's the direction you're going, right? It's not like, how do I get rid of it completely, turn off my phone, and never look at it ever again?
Well, there may be sometimes especially with some gamers, where we need to reset the brain. That's a different
story.
Just want to make it clear, though.
100%. And I agree with you in the interaction piece. I can't tell you how many times me and my daughter build a castle with these magnetic cubes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Legos.
Yeah.
I mean,
She'll remember that.
Oh,
They will not remember the iPad.
100%.
They will remember. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
both of my kids were very different. And when I would give them baths when they were about that age, it was like, my wife and I would trade off, and one of us would read the books. Read books with your kids, of course. Don't just give them the iPad to read books. But we would trade off. One would do bath and one would do books. Both of my kids had 1,000 of those little figures. 10,000 figures, and I always knew it was coming. They still talk about this. At the time, I would just roll my eyes like, oh my God, here we go, because it was one of my daughters, and it tells you a lot about them without telling you, and they're both great. One of them would say, we'd get in the bathtub, and she was 2, 3, 4, whatever she was, and we'd get all the figures in there, and she'd say, let's talk. That would mean I would take one figure, she would take another, and we would do little plays and little scenarios and all of that. My younger daughter would say, she would say, Daddy, talk them. This was a show. She had no interest in engaging. She just needed me to entertain her.
That's funny.
Yeah, and it's very interesting of who they are. The one is like, let's talk. And we would talk them.
Right.
The other was, Daddy, talk them. And that was my command, to put on a show for her while she was in the bathtub with all of the figures and create a different narrative every evening.
Right.
But they remember that. I can't believe they talk about this still. I didn't think they remembered. They're not going to remember that time they spent on the iPad. He might remember you playing Frisbee. And when he sees a Frisbee, he's going to maybe have a memory imprinted that says, oh my goodness, I used to play that with my mom.
I think that the ultimate, and I'd love to get your take on it, right? The ultimate purpose of applications, of companies these days that live on the digital world, that are completely digital, right, is to grab attention.
And keep it.
Right? Do you think that there's a line as to how far these organizations can go, as to where is it to the point? I don't know if you watched the documentary. I forgot what it was called, but it was pretty much this kid, like, he's playing the computer of his own vision, and he's selecting all of these apps that like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do that, I'm going to buy this. Everything is in front of him, right? And so as we get into the VR world, as we get into that, like, what does the future hold, where, you know, you have cryptocurrencies where you don't even have real money anymore, where you have virtual currencies, you have virtual worlds, you have people buying property in virtual worlds, where it's not even interesting to own real property anymore. Now I don't know if you're familiar with like NFTs. Sandbox and all of these companies.
Well, I was talking about, yeah.
Right.
Of course,
so it's like,
of course.
Where's this going? Like, and like, obviously there's no limit with technology. As you said, you can study it 1 minute and then 6 months later it's a completely different model.
Yeah, by the afternoon. It's
right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. Well, here's how I'll try to answer that succinctly, because you asked, there was a lot of unpack there.
For sure.
Where the future's going, unclear. You say things like cryptocurrency. Sorry, not sorry. I have my own feelings about that.
Yeah.
There's certain things, you know, for years now, my last slide in presentations I call the event horizon. And I put on there the things that are maybe next year's big thing or what's coming. And I was recently going through all of my historical presentations and looking to see how many of those were right.
Right.
There are a lot of things. I mean, you know, you can talk about even back in the beginning, Google Wave. You can talk about, you know, the first MySpace was going to, you know.
Right.
So, and we're looking right now at apps. Everyone wants an app. There's a lot of things that they have sustainability. Crypto, you know, I was reading this morning about driverless cars. You know, there's people talk about the Jetsons and flying. I don't know. There are certain things we know that are here. And like I said, there were some things we thought we had about 10 years to get ahead, and we still knew we were going to lose. But then COVID happened, and we became so reliant by necessity to engage, and thank goodness we had it. But there's a lot of apps and a lot of things that either were already here, were being improved upon, or that were necessitated that people might never have used. Like, you know, some people said, I would never buy tomatoes online. Now they're shopping in Instacart, and they love it. There's a lot of things that, you know, and we were going to lose the battle. And we're going to lose the battle of what I want, which is keeping us covalent in real life and doing the kind of things. You can write LOL all you want. It's still never going to have the same imprint or the same memory that actually sitting with people and laughing is going to do. When we think back to our relationships, I believe that when we think of people, we think about the times we laughed with them, we cried with them, or we had an experience that had something like that. So in terms of what's coming, we already know, and a lot of it was exacerbated and accelerated. Right now, my work is looking at what that we've now seen and what has evolved and what landed that maybe would never have or would have taken 10 years or whatever because of mother necessity. What is going to be looked at historically as a short-term, very wonderful adaptation of behavior that was confinement secular, and what pieces are going to be now lifestyle adoptions of behavior involving digital or cyber. Some of the things that I believe, and I think it's hard to argue, that are here now, certainly academics. The online school, the remote schooling, these have been around, MOOCs have been around for a while, but the idea of online schooling, that was going to be here, but now it's here, and now it's an option, and now it will continue to be an option. I'm just worried, like you were saying, that when we all go into virtual reality, then schools are going to be in virtual reality. The kids are going to have avatars, and it's going to be like that bar in the first Star Wars movie, that all the kids are going to have these weird avatars. We'll see. But certainly academics, work. Now my children, the digital natives, we can't argue with them anymore. Oh, we have to go in the office. So the idea of the digital immigrants' work ethic who didn't believe that remote work could work, well, not only did we show that, not always, but it can, but the digital natives all know it works, and they're going to be the decision makers very soon. So the idea of being able to have maybe even a hybrid of 3 days in the office and 2 days out, we would all, with the digital immigrants, would have voted against it, I suspect, and said, no, it can't work. Oh, well, that's out the window. The digital natives now say that it does, and they prefer it, and they don't prefer it all the time, maybe, and we'll see. But that's over. Shopping and commerce is what I'm really looking at, because the idea of the death, not just of the mall, but of the small mom and pops which built this country. They couldn't compete against places like Amazon and Bezos anyway.
Of course.
I'm wondering if people will still support that, or if it's going to be 3 different, marketplaces online. And what I did see, what I did see is the trends are actually coming, that people are going back to stores. Now, did COVID kill the mom and pop boutique? Was that going to be, something that was a liability or a casualty? I don't know. But there's a lot of things, Arthur, that virtual reality, augmented reality, we thought augmented reality would be here first, but the holograms are too difficult. AI is the thing I'm worried about.
Me too.
Oh, absolutely.
AI's here. When I find myself, there's not one around, is there? Because they wake up.
No, there's
They're
no AI.
everywhere.
Oh, there's no Amazon here.
Okay, so Alexa, and I do something wrong, or she, he, they, even personifying it with that, because I don't know what people change the tone of it. The robots are here. The robots, you can get one right now. People don't believe me. You can go online and order one custom made. But when I find myself, who's supposed to know better, and Alexa doesn't turn off when I ask her to, and then I get angry. And I say, Alexa, I said, shut the up. And then I feel bad. And I, who's supposed to know better, is saying, I'm sorry, Alexa, I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to a box that I personified as human. And this is the most nascent. I've seen some of the stuff that's coming. Everything you've seen in a movie is going to be here. People didn't believe me. But the robots, I'm not saying it's going to be all Westworld, but we have to be aware that people want this.
Why would they want it?
You tell me. Have you talked to any kids around do they really like interacting with people?
My son does.
At 4, though.
At 4. So you're saying as they develop and get older, they lose interest in interacting?
I'm hoping that there will be interaction. That was for you, Arthur. But what I'm seeing amongst the teens, and I've worked with them for a long time, and the young adults, they actually don't want to talk to people. They don't want to talk to salespeople. They don't know how to make small talk. They actually would prefer, because there's going to be when the jobs that we see, things like cashiers, we already see it. Whenever a cashier tries to say, let me show you how to use the automated teller, I say, do you realize what you're doing? And I realize you have to do this because you realize there's going to be going even to McDonald's or Starbucks. It's all going to be automated. There's going to be none of those lower tier jobs left. It's going to be all automated. But what I'm finding is that the kids actually are okay with that. They don't want to talk to people in stores. They don't want to talk to salespeople. They cringe at the idea of even getting on the phone with a representative. So I don't know.
And so for you're calling it the native generation.
The digital natives who prefer texting, who prefer not talking to people, who don't know how to make small talk, who don't know how to accept an organic bid for connection or even extend one. My own kids are like this. There's a store on Melrose my daughter loves because she said she can walk in, she goes in the dressing room, there's a menu, it's got all of the clothes there. It can show 3D, she can show it on herself. She pushes a button, she waits, a door opens, the dress arrives, she tries it on. She finds it. She can look at it. She can then go and see in 3D what it looks like on her. She decides if she wants it. She uses, if she likes it, a credit card, mine, and she buys it. She puts it back in. It goes back. It's wrapped. She never had to talk to one person in the store. She said, Daddy, this is the greatest store ever. And she is a normal kid, but she's a very much bell curve kid of her generation because I work with them all the time.
Well, forget about that. Like, I mean, that you don't have to leave your home.
Oh, you do not.
Right. So we have a couple friends that they buy their clothes. So Amazon had this whole new thing, and I think a bunch of stores are adapting it, where you can buy your clothing online. They'll ship it to you. You can choose up to however many outfits you want. Mm-hmm. If you don't like it, put it back in the box, ship it over, and they only charge you. So the friction is so limited. There's no friction at all. They only charge you if you keep the item. So you're pretty much getting items for free and only paying for the ones you get. So the whole point of going to a store, trying it on, seeing if it looks good, returning
the shame spiral that goes on when you don't like the way it looks.
You have it at home.
And the other thing you missed is you don't even have to take it back. You can print out a label and leave it out. Amazon will come pick it back up for you. Or these stores that do this.
Or they already give you the label.
Well, they'll have the pre-printed label, and you can put it back. You don't even have to take it to anywhere.
Right.
It will just, yes. How do you argue with that?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's, number one, social norms. People might not feel comfortable talking to people. I think it's laziness, ease of access, not wanting to get out of the couch, not wanting to leave the home, not wanting to put in the effort to do that work. If you knowingly you can get it like this without even thinking about it, right? Because we want things faster, quicker, simpler, less processing, less friction to access. And so, to your point, like, we're going to be living in a world where the lower tier jobs, you're not going to find anybody in any of these locations.
So how do you build a career? But you said something I just want to point out again, what I said earlier. You don't miss what you don't know. This is the only time in the history of mankind, in the history, that the digital natives and the digital immigrants will cohabit this planet at the same time. Once we're gone, we have abdicated to them. You can call me a geek, you can call me an emo, you can call me anything you want. I still believe in writing love letters that are written. Yes. I don't believe in breaking up over a text. I don't believe in breaking up over ghosting someone. I believe in thank you notes. I like getting an invitation to an event in the mail and opening it, as long as it doesn't have all that. Why do people confetti and all that? But if you don't know that, because the only way we know the value of an experience
100%.
Is if we have experienced it. So how would the kids know what it feels like to go to a store, interact, or do anything like this with people if they've never experienced it? Because in anything, we have to be evidenced that the event, the experience, the effort has value. But if you've never experienced it, it's like, I'm not going to go on a roller coaster because I hate them. Well, have you ever been on one? No, but I just know. It's too scary. Well, okay.
Right. I mean, to speak to your point, I look at, like, my father, right, and, like, the generation before me, where they didn't believe in handyman. They didn't believe in people coming. He just got on a ladder, hung up the chandelier
How'd that
himself.
Work for them?
Well,
Yeah,
so
right.
So part of it is learning from mistakes of things that, like, right. So we don't have that connection like they did, and they don't have the connections that their parents. So I that's so on point. Where if they didn't even know what love letter writing was, they're not going to miss it.
And I know, and I use that example because it's one of the lost things. I like opening a book and smelling it and feeling the tactile on the page. Now, I know.
Scrolling. You don't
well, that's all. We can talk about that. When you were talking earlier about how this is a losing shell game with these designers of the apps, I want you to Pinterest that.
Gambling.
Yeah, with the limbic system and the variable rewards. The game is no pun intended, against us. We'll talk about that. But I want to go back to, even if you don't believe in things like love letters or books, look, here's an example of books. I love books. I know. I love books. I love reading books. I love the feel. I love the pages. However, if it's a silly book that I'm taking on a vacation or something that I'm not going to really, it's a soft cover book or it's just a trendy book or something, I'm all about a Kindle. I'm all about a Kindle for that kind of thing. But I still, if it's a book that and I hope that the classics stand, but if I'm going to read a book that is something that is meaningful to me, or it's a book that someone, recommended that I really think is an experience of a book, I want to feel the pages. I want the full experience. But again, the middle path is, if it's a book that is just a trendy New York Times bestseller or some silly thing that I just want to take, or I'm on a plane or I'm on a train or I'm going wherever, or I'm just have a few on my Kindle that are just books that I wouldn't really keep, yeah, let's save the paper and the trees. And that's fine. So that's an example of where I say we just have to have a healthy balance here. But if you don't know what it feels like to enjoy a book and turn a book and feel the pages and scratch and sniff and be whatever for the kids' books, you're not going to miss it. Every single thing we know, every single thing we like, people, place, thing, was once foreign and strange to us.
Right.
So I'm worried that if the kids don't see the value of the digital natives and we don't teach them, and now we have given up those behaviors, then they're lost forever. And this is the time. Trust me, guys, this work is really, really hard. Like I said, I'm not begrudging it. I'm very grateful for the opportunities I have, but it's hard because this is the one moment and we're going to lose this battle. And once AI, VR, hybrid, whatever's next, yeah, the world in the future is going to be a little different, but we will never have the opportunity ever again. This is the only time those of us who were before. Now, also, I just want to say this, and I know I'll let you. Every generation said, those kids, the rock and roll is going to do this, the TV is going to do this. So every generation has the ones above it of being resistant to change. I am not resistant to change. I believe, and I think I've earned this, but I've been told, I have dual citizenship. I was born a digital immigrant, but I worked really hard, and still continue on a daily basis to work really hard to have earned at least temporary visa status in the digital native world, maybe moving towards some sort of dual citizenship. But I do that because I recognize that once we're gone, the things that I think are important, they can teach us a lot. I learned so much from the digital immigrants and digital natives, and I use lots of technology and love it. I learn from them. My older brain, it's a little harder sometimes. But I think that we cannot forget to teach them the things that make us human, the things about connection, the things about extending organic bids for connection, accepting them, not just having everything be remote, not having every relationship be through cyberspace. I think we can learn from each other. But again, once we're gone, will they care?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Now stay with me because I really want to make sure I phrase this correctly.
Okay.
It's so funny I'm talking to you because recently, 2 weeks ago, I'm a big meditator. And so I'll meditate and I'll sit for an hour and I work through any emotional challenges.
There's some great meditation apps.
Yeah. I usually like to just sit in silence.
There's that too.
I called my mom afterwards and I said, Mom, I am so excited. She's like, why, darling? I'm going to get a landline. And she said, why are you going to get a landline? I said, because I want to turn my fucking phone off on the weekends. The only reason I don't turn my phone off is because I'm a mother and I'm afraid someone needs to reach me. And if something was wrong with my son. And I said, if I have a landline, I can turn my phone off and just be available to actual emergency, because I find myself feeling that people are entitled to me just because there's a phone there. And I feel like it teaches this experience of entitlement that, especially with text messaging, and I find that
there's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like
we'll have you back on.
The other thing, so I'll say two things. Does text messaging create negative responses in our nervous system around our attachment systems? Because I find that it is the worst thing on the planet, especially if you're anxiously attached like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you want to talk about texting? I'll try to do this
Yes.
fast. And sorry, Drake, hashtag soon as you see the text, reply me. I'm calling bull on that. Okay, first of all, good luck getting a landline.
Why?
Because they stopped giving them about 5 years ago.
No, they didn't. They offered me one last year.
You can get one, but the problem is the number of people aren't going to have it.
Why not? Why?
Because they'll have your phone.
You'll have to call everybody that you know and give them your landline.
That's fine. I said I'm only going to give the landline to my family members.
I've got a way around that because
Okay.
the landline, because we just put one, and because I have a treatment, I run a treatment program, so we have to have a landline. They can get them. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you don't want to do that, and I love that, I gave up my landline about 5 years ago, and then I was like, oh, I should have kept it because I was paying for it, but no one knew the number, and they'd hit me up anyway even when I gave them the number because I'm in my house. What you can do is you can put this is again using technology. You can put silence on all of your numbers on your cell phone except for the ones. I have this. I do this. So there's times when I want to be in presence and not be distracted by that device. So I will put on. There's a setting. They all have them where all that will happen is if God forbid zombie apocalypse, the only time my phone will ring will be if one of my daughters calls or a couple other people. Those would be the people who I would be their point of contact for God forbid an emergency. Otherwise, my phone will not ring, it will not text, it will not alert. The person will get a message that I'm not available. But the only ones who can get through that blockade are the couple of people who I would be the person they should call, and I would want to call an emergency. You can do that. You're talking about texting. Oh my goodness. Okay, I have yes, and yes. I don't know when this happened. We used to have a phone in my house. I'm dating myself. It was a beige phone. It hung on the wall. It rang, and we picked it up. I mean, you never knew who it was going to be. It could be grandma,
Always a surprise.
or it could be a guy calling to tell my 8-year-old self that if my dad didn't pay, they were going to break his legs. That actually happened. Okay, I'll leave the note for Daddy. It was a whole thing. I'm from Detroit. It was a whole thing. You never knew who was going to call. Now there's so many ways to reach us. But there's a lot. And then we didn't know who was going to answer, right? We didn't know who was on the end of that line. And at the dinner table, when it rang, my mother would give us a look. Don't you answer that. And we'd all sit and pause as the phone rang. And all of us, especially my older brother, because he was a teenager, would be like dying. And my mother would say, don't you touch it. Don't you move for that phone. But no one would eat. We'd all just sit there and wait interminably while that phone rang for how many rings and it'd stop. And then we resumed dinner. My brother would be like, who was that? Then we'd answer machines. We could screen calls. And in the meantime, there was call service. We'd answer machines. And our entire, at least for me, my entire ego and my entire self-worth was built when I came back every day of that blinking light. So this is where we first saw from me technology in terms of communication impacting my self-worth in my day. So I would come home and the first thing I would look at autonomically would be that old answering machine. And if that light was blinking, I'm good.
Yeah.
This is a good day for me.
Yeah.
And if I came home and that was dark, I'm a loser. Everyone hates me. My entire night is ruined. So that's where I first noticed that technology and communication could impact me and my feeling about myself, because that answer machine told me my value.
And is it because the first time you answered it and you had a positive association with that experience, it created a reward system around that?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm going to tether this to texting.
Yeah.
Of how communication and what you're talking about. But I just traced it back and I was, you know what? That was that answering machine. That red light would absolutely determine my value. And it could be a bunch of what we call now spam. It could be a guy saying he was going to break and didn't have a breaking light. I didn't care who was on it. Go ahead.
Is that, I mean, like, this is just like a shocking, mind-blowing thing, but is that why text messaging, the numbers are in red?
Hold please.
Can you imagine if that was the case?
Wow.
Hold please. Let's go over here. Texting to me and any of your audience, I've said this from stages, not even just in this country. I just believe this. Text messages to me, in most cases, are a lazy version of a phone call. Now, let me unpack this a little bit. Most text messages that I get, if they were a phone call, I would have sent them to voicemail. I don't know when it happened that we decided that when we get that little beep that sends a dopamine hit, the same as that answering machine red light, I didn't know who it was, but someone's thinking about me. We get that little alert and a dopamine hit happens because someone's thinking about us. But texting, when did we decide that it is a 911 emergency? We get a text and the world stops and we have to see who texted us. Most texts I get, if they were a phone call, I would have just sent them to voicemail, or they would be a voicemail. But texting to me, please excuse. Now, there's a lot of things about texting. I'm meeting you. I'm going to be late. What's the address? Can I pick you up? Something. There's a lot of texting.
Logistics.
Very valuable. But when we start getting into these text threads and we start getting texts that are not really important, and we get them all the time, and people usually, or often it's someone doesn't want to hear, they don't want to take the time to even listen to your voicemail, because voicemails are all full now with the digital natives. They don't want to listen to your voicemail. They don't want to hear you. They just want to impart information or get information, and they don't care. It's about what they need. However, we get that text, and somehow we all collectively decided that it is a 911 emergency. If it's a phone call, we let it go to voicemail and we want to check. If it's a text, we just decide the world is stopping. I have been in meetings, and again, I'm telling myself, I'm supposed to know better, right? So I can't imagine what people who don't have the experience in this that I do. I get it, I'll feel it, and I'll have my phone on vibrate. Now, why I have it on vibrate? Because texting also has created a phenomenon. Turn your devices off. When you're in a movie, when you're in a meeting, when with your kids, why do we put it on silent sometimes? Why don't we turn it off? I don't think the zombie apocalypse is going to happen in the hour we're in the meeting or in the movies or with our friends or at dinner. And if it does, if anyone watches any of the Walking Dead series, we all have learned, not through the heart. You got to hit them through the head. It's through the head. I don't think it's going to happen, but we are faced. When you hear that thing and it says, please turn your devices to off or silent, it's our first moral dilemma. We know we should turn them off, but we can't do it. We put them on silent. So then when that little beep comes, now the world stops. Now we need to know who it was. Now nothing matters except that dopamine, that cortisol. Who is it? Who thought of me? It feeds that thing about someone thought of me, right? What is it? So I've been in meetings and I know I should turn it off, and I hear that little vibration and I feel it. And I know I shouldn't. And I know I shouldn't. And I know I shouldn't. So I surreptitiously, I'm not going to lie, will reach in my pocket because I got to know, what is the text? And I open it, it's my boy, and he's like, yo, what up? That's what I was like. I've lost I'm now in absent presence, as I call it, with my, and I know she put back in my phone. I'm like, not much, what's up? And it's so silly, but texting does not need to be replied to. But for some reason, we treat text, or most of us, as if it's a 911 emergency, and we have to respond to it. And we cannot do anything until we see who texted us, and we have to reply. I'm going to say one last thing. Anyone who knows me, including my kids, know I have a rule. 3 texts back and forth, 6 total. I will do 3 text threads back and forth. When it goes past that, I pick up the phone, and we're talking. Because it's no longer, what time should I pick you up? Where are you at? Would you like an In-N-Out burger? Hey, what's that name of that person? Can I have this number? It's now a conversation. I pick up the phone and call. Everyone who knows me, including my daughters, know once it goes, I'll go to 6, 3 back and forth. But here's what happens with my own kids. They're amazing. Suddenly I'll say, okay, you just went past the mark. And I pick up the phone and I call. And what happens? I call and it rings. They do not pick up.
The phone. They answer
and
my
it
text.
Goes to voicemail. And the voicemail is full. I'm like, and I text, this has happened. Are you kidding me right now? You are texting me. You did not answer. I know my name came up with whatever evil, funny, my kids put funny emojis after us. They vary, their mom and I. Sometimes I got a good one. Sometimes I'm very often Michael Scott from The Office. But sometimes I'll have emojis next to my name. It'll say dad, or it'll say the guy who pays, but anyway, it's funny. They think it's funny. There'll be a devil, one of the devil emojis, and their moms are different, and we're always amused. I said, I know it came up and you saw it. I said, you're not answering. So, okay, well, now I'm going to end this now because I now have to Google to figure out how to text you your allowance. Oh, they call me right back. Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry.
That's, yeah.
I just noticed for myself, and I literally created this theory for myself a couple weeks ago, that because I'm anxiously attached.
To what?
human beings.
Okay.
Especially men.
That's a whole other podcast as well. I'd actually like to be in on that one. I'm not going to lie. Wait, can we do that one? Let's talk about 25. Rachel's anxious attachment to men.
Well,
can we do that?
I do it off mic all the time, so.
Oh no, I want to be a part of that. That sounds super awesome.
Well, yeah, I've been trying to figure it out for years, but
let's do it.
But because for me, if you're anxiously attached, space means death and abandonment. Mm-hmm. So because with a phone call, right? You're either going to get a hold of someone, they're going to show up at your door. Back in the olden days, they're going to show up at your door, they're going to write a letter, or they're going to call you on your landline. That was the only way to be available. You didn't constantly have this hypervigilance of, oh my God, they didn't text me back. Oh my God, they didn't text me back. The space of hours and not seeing the red light go up. Oh, they didn't text me back.
Or the ...
Okay.
Oh, the dot.
But then it goes away and there's no message to follow.
Have you ever seen my presentation on this? One of my slides is the ellipses.
I've seen one of your presentations at UCLA, but that was years ago.
I talk about this. I say when you talk about dysregulation, I say, and then there's the dreaded ellipses, which is a new phenomenon. Because what happens is that you're in the text thread exactly, and then you're like, I'm going to make this up. Hello, Mary. I'm making this up. But all right, okay, and we're in a conversation, and I'm talking to a woman and we're texting, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I just want to let you know, I have to say it. I really, really like you. And you're dying because you're not in front of you. You can't read the social cues, so that's out. You're not on the phone, so you can't hear the tonal cues, and you can't hear the cadence, and you can't hear the deep intake of breath. You're texting. And you say, I really kind of like you. You know, I'm kind of into you. And then you see the dreaded ellipses. And whenever we all see the dreaded ellipses, again, it's like I said, time stops.
Pause.
Everything stops. Nothing. The zombie apocalypse could happen, and I am glued to my device. I am watching. They're texting. What are they going to say? What are they going to say? All these things. Right. Oh my God. Right. And then they go away.
My God. And it goes away. Listen.
It is awful.
We could talk about this for hours.
You gotta say?
You can talk about this for hours. You could, with WhatsApp, you have the read, who was delivered to, who read it, why didn't, so.
There's tricks around all of that, by the way.
Yeah. I want to leave with last point, and then I want to dive into something that's recent for you.
Okay.
Because this can go. I feel like this is a big, big problem, and I face this from a professional standpoint.
There's no problems, only solutions, Arthur.
There you go. Handsome is also my private coach. Face this professionally and personally. And I think it's a huge problem with texting and messaging in general is one's interpretation of the message.
Oh my God, the tone.
Well, there is no tone.
There's no tone.
So you think it's...
Okay. So it's the interpretation and what was actually transcribed from the person that originated it.
100%. And I talk about this. Without facial cues, affect, cadence, voice, any of that, texts can be very, very... Also, it depends on the skill set of the texter, their grammar, their spelling. Autocorrect has gotten me in trouble a couple of times in ways that are like... OMG, how do I walk this cyber accident back? But texting can be very misconstrued. It can cause a lot of problems. Professionally, I want you to Pinterest that. So here's what I do. I actually teach this because if you don't believe this, in the program, I've always taught this. I will give the kids or adults, I'll just say, go pick a book because we have a library in the programs, right? Go pick a book. I don't care what you pick. I have them bring back a book. I say, okay, I want you to go through the book and I want you to find any piece of dialogue, or it has to be dialogue. It cannot be like narrative. It can't be exposition. It needs dialogue. I said, I want you to pick anything. Make sure that it's about 3 lines. Any book you want. And then I do it like an audition, and I have them read it. I love you. I say, okay, that's great. Try it another way. I love you. Okay, try another way. I love you. And I'm using a really simple one, but I have them and I demonstrate for them. Because again, if you don't experience it, and I have them take a couple of lines of text and have them read it like they were an audition. We'll try it angry. Okay, could you do that again? And try that with hit this word. Try that again, leave this word out. Whenever I do this, and what I'm demonstrating is what you said, you can take text and it can be interpreted in so many different ways. And every time I run this group, they all grumble, it's so stupid, it's not going to work. It's stupid with a T, Don. And then they do it. And I said, okay, so imagine if that was the text you sent and you meant it the first way, but they interpreted it the second way. And I do that. Yep. And I teach that because Brilliant. You're 100% right.
Right.
And how many of us have not been sure when we received a text?
I hate text messaging.
Well, I like well, you can't be sarcastic in a text without getting in trouble.
But it's not irreverent.
If you like someone and you're just trying to get to know someone on text messaging, it is the worst. I'm the worst flirter on texting. I ask everyone.
Well, get back to the men and the
that's episode 25.
That's our episode we're doing. Can you save that because I really am interested in all of this, Rachel. In fact, I'm ready to pivot right now and just get all deep dive into this.
Okay.
So that's the online dating things and all that game, but this kind of seems like it falls in the silo of that other thing.
Yeah.
We could do another podcast about that.
We definitely do another podcast because listen, there's a lot to unpack with you, and there's so many floors of this.
There's floors have sub-basements. When I show you how hard this is, it's not like EMDR or like DBT. There's so many silos. Right. The silos have sub-basements. There's the gamers. There's the social mediaites. There's the online porn, which I hope I can say, which no one wants to talk about, is destroying a generation of sexuality.
Yes.
There's gambling. There's school. There's so much. That's why I said, why did I even take this on? I thought this was like an iceberg. It's an ice flow. It's an iceberg, and I didn't realize that till I was too
not
late
even. I think.
And then your refrigerator is a screen, and people say, oh well, that's an issue as well.
Yeah, well, especially when your refrigerator can order the groceries for you when it knows it's running low.
Disorder.
I saw one of those robots.
We had David Wiss on.
I love David
on our podcast 2 weeks ago.
But it can't order your food. Oh, you're out of milk. That's great.
So. You were telling me I
want to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
Professionally, and this is a whole other thing, and I just presented this. We worked on this for a long time. So I'm the chair of the American Psychological Association Device Management and Intelligence Committee. Oh. I'm not flexing on that. I'm not trying to be like arrogant.
But that sounded really cool.
That was really cool.
Well, it's a lot of work in this whole service, so I'm going to promote a little bit. But I'm not, like I said, trying to be arrogant to joke on my name. They developed it because of the work that me and my colleague did, and it was really important. And the thing that we did is we created the 12 APA recommended guidelines for professionals. Because what I started to see a few years ago is the lines got blurred, and doctors used to cut out their addresses on magazines and waiting rooms in small towns of people who they'd worked with for generations and delivered their children. And I see professionals who are putting things out on social media, and we're so busy trying to harvest likes and affirmations and shares, we don't think about the people sitting out there seeing our stuff online and going, again, Scooby-Doo, they'll never tell us. It could cost us. It could compromise us. I have a whole list of what I call horror professional campfire stories where professionals who have called me and said, oh my goodness, how do I walk back this thing? So there's 12 guidelines. It's a whole other thing. And there's a reason why there's 12, and anyone in recovery might know why. Shh, don't tell anyone. That was just a little kiss I did to another world I walk in proudly. So professionals, yes, this is all new. And what we have to realize is that from the moment, I tell the kids this, from the moment, and every time we have a digital footprint, a digital imprint. This is the first time in history. These are the first humans who are, from the moment they imprint online, they're creating and writing, curating their autobiography for life that will never go away. Even if it's deleted, it's on a server somewhere or someone screenshot it. But I tell the kids and I tell adults, you are now creating and writing your autobiography, which will outlive you forever and be beamed out to space. You want to maybe be mindful of that, because if it looks like a good idea now, you might not think so. And we already see how people who 20 years ago, especially celebrities, at the time it was appropriate or fine, and it bites them. And I tell the kids and I tell everyone, every time you put something online, it is part of your autobiography forever. And I'm not going to lie, I think, personally, it would have been super helpful if my parents had an Instagram and I could have seen their Instagram when they were 16, because it probably would have helped me with a lot of the arguments and the things and kept me out of a lot of trouble when I was a teenager. I'd be like, really, Dad? let's go back to your Instagram from 19. Oh, what is that you're smoking, Dad? So I also say for professionals, this is your store window. You can post whatever you want. It is First Amendment. You have the right to do whatever. But we all, I think, well, I shouldn't say all, but I think a lot of us have sat there and seen professionals that we know, and we've seen some of their stuff that they've shared online, and we go, oh my, they will never know what we think because we're so busy trying to get the affirmations. But I tell professionals, be very careful about what you put out there. As a professional, you have a reputation. Also, if you're affiliated with an organization, if you put on your social media that I am the whatever at Interactions, then I better be very clear that whatever I'm doing represents the brand of this program and the people around it before I post it, because people then could affiliate the brand with my personal views, and that's not cool. If you don't want to do it, then just don't put affiliations. Work Dad is a member of, that's fine. But I think personally and professionally, if I'm going to put on and flex an organization I'm with, I better make sure that whatever I post is not going to sully, because people will attach me. They'll say, "Oh, people interaction. Arthur's like that. I didn't know that." So that's a whole other thing. Too.
It's to speak to that. It's fascinating because you and I kind of mingle within similar circles in a lot of ways from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, our Venn diagram overlaps.
Yeah, sure. And I've known people 5, 6, 7 years and knew them in a certain light. And then, and I avoid doing this completely. For me, it's all professional business stuff, like new events, facilities I'm opening. That's about
It's a great way to, that's what it's great for. Free marketing. No more short. It's great. Right. Love it. Use it.
When people start going into the 3 don't talk abouts, it's mind-blowing to me because we're friends and I know and we might not agree, and that's fine. That's okay. Right. But now it's there. And especially if you're the type of person that goes from a company to a different company or whatever, people remember these things. And in my mind, I'm just thinking of a couple people to mind. Like, I wouldn't probably employ this individual because philosophies are different.
That's right. It's not your mission statement.
It's right, and so it's like, well, if you're willing to post this kind of stuff, what else are you willing to post? Correct. I'm afraid to hire you.
Correct.
Because I don't know what you're going to do.
And you might have before.
Exactly.
So that's why I say we'll never know. We're so busy harvesting the affirmations and the likes and the shares.
Right.
We never know how many people see our stuff, don't comment, sitting there in the dark, and they say, oh, okay, that's good to know, because I will not be inviting them, interviewing them, aligning with them. I'll tell you, I had it over one or two of the things we don't do online. Usually, what's recommended with my own family. There's family members that I didn't know had different kind of ideas about things. Like, really? Now they're my family, but I'm like, whoa, that's good to know. But in a professional capacity, yes, I've done it too, where I'm like, oh wow, I would have maybe considered that person for something, but now I don't feel safe or comfortable doing it. Right. And we will never know.
You never know. It's fascinating. Did you have something? Oh, okay. So I want to cover one last topic as the time is coming up, unfortunately.
Is it? Are we going to do Rachel's thing now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rachel, let's go back into, so men, attachment, thirsty,
Arthur's
thirst trap. What is this? It's a thirst trap thing, right? Is that what's happening here?
I'm feeling raw and vulnerable in this moment.
That's good. That's a great podcast then.
Let's start from year 5.
5 years old?
You recently presented at the APA conference.
Correct.
On attachments and attachments to technology and the world we live in. Tell me, what is it? What's the theory? What are you working on right now?
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate this. And I can say it now because I just presented at the APA, the American Psychological, people don't know what APA is, but I think maybe you're, they're like, APA, what is that?
I know.
Oh, it's a grocery store somewhere in Des Moines. Oh, I'm going down to the APA. Right. No, that's the A&P. So American Psychological Association, which obviously is the, psychological, we don't. If you don't know, you can look it up or not. So their yearly world conference, thank goodness, after a couple of years, like many things, was online. Now it was IRL, in real life. And I presented a theory that I've been working on for 7 years. So I started being concerned about how devices impact all kinds of things, right? But one of the things that I was looking at was attachment. So if you know anything about attachment theory, and Rachel, again, we're here for you. There's two types of attachment, and it's about relationships. Attachment are relational bonds, and usually they are formed during very early years between a caregiver, parent, caregiver, and the child. So there's two forms of attachment styles. It's secure, which obviously speaks for itself. It's good. You have a secure attachment bond with your child. Your child has good ego strength, healthy sense of self, can go on and be trusting in relationships, blah, blah. And I personally believe that all relational things go back to attachment. It informs our life. It's not a set thing, and it's not like it can't change. But going back to this piece of it, the other type is insecure attachment. It means that the bond between the caregiver and the child is not secure. It's got some fissures, some ruptures, whatever, and that can inform the child's ego strength, sense of self, sense of codependency, whatever happens later. So there are three types of insecure attachment, and I'm not going to go into a whole thing about attachment. If anyone's interested, there's great literature on this, and certainly you can look at that. I propose something I've been working on for 7 years, which is perhaps a very lofty idea that we are seeing an emergent form, new form of insecure attachment that is device-driven. Let me explain what I mean. Meaning the caregiver is there. They're with the kid. They're with the child. But they are in what I call absent presence rather than present presence. Present presence means what we're doing right now. And this is actually thinking, what a great example of how you can use technology. We're able to do this podcast. We're able to look at each other and have a relationship between us, reach other people through technology. But this is a great example. Right. But being in present presence is being there, being present, what we were talking about earlier, Rachel, about really being focused, really being attentive. Absent presence means that you are there in corporal presence, but you're not really. Now, where are you? You're on your device. So you're in absent presence, meaning you're there, but you're really more wherever you are in your device. So my fear was that there are parents and caregivers, no fault of their own, because it's so alluring, as we talked about, and it's a shell game that we're set up for by designers. Once they get our eyes in those screens, their goal is like a casino to keep us there. And they use a lot of tricks and a lot of leveraging of our limbic system, the variable reward system, a lot of things that they do to keep us in those screens. And I just tell people, if it's free, you are the product. So that's their goal, to sell us stuff, get data on us, whatever. However, I was fearful that caregivers were there and they're creating an insecure attachment bond because they're not. They're on their device when the child is trying to get their attention, when the child wants to talk to them, when they should be, could be, might be spending that time we were talking earlier about playing with blocks and playing, but they are not there. And the message to the child is rejection. The message to the child, I'm not important. I had a person I really love a lot, who I really respect, a clinical psychologist, has children. She is amazing. And she came to me a few years ago and she said, Don, I think I need your help. I said, why? She said, my daughter just asked me if I love my phone more than her.
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
She was devastated. During the pandemic, and I believe this, and I was testing this and working on this before the pandemic, and I do it, but your audience can't see this, but it's this. It's your kid is like this. The message to the child is, you're not as important. I believe that it could be causing ruptures at least, and maybe if the parent is always on it or always working, that it could cause an insecure attachment. That if it wasn't for the device, that bond between that kid and that parent, or that caregiver and that parent, would be a secure attachment. But because of the device intervening, and the parent doesn't even know it, the kid is getting messaging of rejection, of not importance, and that's how insecure attachments are formed: avoidant, fearful, anxious, the stuff you were talking about. I think then, when we were all confined, it may have been even exacerbated more, because especially for a kid who's a developmental stage of attachment, all they know is mommy, daddy, caregiver is home. They don't realize they're working, There was a lot of, because we were all learning this, a lot of slamming doors because mommy and daddy was on a Zoom call with their boss, or they were with, stop, I've got to go. The kid did not know. All they know is that the person is their caregiver is there. They're trying to get their attention all the time because they're not at work. So when they go to work, they're not there, but they're home. And the parents are trying to work, are trying to get some free time, maybe didn't feel well, but they're on their devices and they're working from home. And the kid's trying to open the door and the parent doesn't mean to, but they get out or go away or stop it because they're on a Zoom call or they're on a thing with their boss or they're trying to get a deadline, and the kid doesn't get it, and the kid internalizes it at that age as rejection.
Because they're very black and white in their thinking,
that's correct.
Right?
Or a teenager for once is going to come and try to talk to their parents about something, and the teenager walks downstairs to talk to their parents for once, and the parent's on their device and says, hold on, or what do you do? Or they're working. I hear this a lot from the kids. So even if you had a secure attachment, there's an attachment rupture that can change the nature of the relationship. This is all the stuff that I presented it at APA last week in Minneapolis at the World Conference. We're doing the study through the Center for Research and Innovation. So we're doing the investigation on this. And I just think that it's something we at least need to look at. But I actually, like I said, I've been working on this for 7 years. And if I'm right about this, it's not great, but maybe we can cauterize it. Maybe if I can prove this, there's even anything to this, then it will help prevent it from becoming worse, becoming more significant, becoming just something that happens. And we have a whole generation and further of kids who do not know how to do relationships or have insecure attachment. And then when we go into virtual reality, we've lost them forever.
Forget about it.
So thank you. I've been keeping it under wrap, but I just presented it. I think it was received well, and we're doing the investigation.
I mean, how could it not be?
I just want to sing right now and dance and like praise you because I just think that is genius.
Yeah.
And I want to cry because I'm a parent and I work with thousands of people and I am a product of insecure attachment, and I would love there to be solutions to prevent this.
Right. Well, the point is, Rachel, it really is that there would be, because all the variables that cause insecure attachment and all the causes and conditions, things that are correlational, those are whatever. My point of why I want to look at this primarily is because it's something that can be avoided. We just didn't know. It's one of the many things like the ellipses, panic, things that now we are the first generations who are facing all of these new phenomenon that we have to navigate and negotiate. We can stop this. And if I'm right about this, and then we know it and people actually recognize it, maybe 10 years later, it will not even be a thing because we can avoid this one. Because what we're looking at is part of the investigation is, would these families and these kids, these caregivers have a secure attachment? The only thing that's causing, as opposed to all the other variables that can cause insecure attachment historically, the only thing that's causing it is something that we can intervene on, and we can then create secure attachments. I also see it with couples. I watch relationships breaking up because the couples are so in their devices that they. But for kids, if I'm right and I can prove it and we can get ahead of this, then we can get rid of it. And it will not, or people can choose to do what they want. That's why I'm trying to look at this now. It's just never been something that happened before.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have you back 100%.
To talk about
more about everything we talked about today.
More about, come on, don't be, see, that's
I'm being avoidant right now. Let me be avoidant. It's my self-defense mechanism.
Here. Rachel, we are here for you, so we really want to help you with this, so please.
It'll be titled, Get to Know Rachel Better.
You are deserving.
Good luck.
You are deserving,
Thank
Rachel. We can help you with this.
Thank you.
So we typically sum up our podcast with a question. Obviously, we've been asking a bunch of questions, but one particular question.
Are we going to make her Rachel? Rachel,
oh my God.
Who hurt you, Rachel?
Don't give Dawn the tools and the keys.
Yes, please do. I'll meet you in a Discord chat room. We'll do it anonymously because the online disinhibition effect means, and it's good and bad, usually bad, that behind the veil of a screen, we'll say and do things that we wouldn't normally say. These are where all the trolls come from online.
This is the future of therapy.
Yeah, well, don't just put that out there.
Yeah.
But for Rachel, for you, if you would prefer, because it's too vulnerable, this is where it's good. If you want to meet, like, I'll set up a chat room in Discord. We can just talk about it, and you can just we can do it that way too. That's
okay, good. I'll have my people call your people.
See, her people. Are they going to text me or call me?
Call.
They'll send a robot to you.
They'll email me.
Carrier pigeon.
Arthur, go ahead.
Carrier pigeon. Knowing what you know now, having all the knowledge you have, all the experience, if you can go back at a time 15 years ago, 20 years ago to a younger, handsome self.
More handsome.
Thank you. What piece of advice would you give yourself?
Oh, that's so easy.
Well, then there you go.
And I'm not even going to try to...
There you go.
I'm not going to hide on this.
Go.
Oh, please. There's only one. I would have gone back and told my younger self, Don, take all that student loan money and buy this thing coming out called Apple.
Nice.
So forget
that's the best answer we've gotten so far.
Don, please
awesome.
Trust me back to the future. Don, take all the student loan money they're giving you. It's coming out. It's called Apple. Buy it all and just wait. Trust me, Don. That's easy.
Can I just preface that statement with that sums up this whole entire podcast so beautifully.
Yeah.
Like
if you just think about what you just said,
I do.
You know what
I'm wrong.
You're not. It's unbelievable.
I was at a couple of years ago presenting at another APA convention, was in San Francisco, and through a weird series of events, I was staying at this boutique hotel that I thought was kind of groovy, and I didn't really look where it was. And it turned out, it was so bizarre, it turned out that this little boutique hotel was on Geary Street in San Francisco, directly, not even like parallel, directly across the street from the American Conservatory Theater, which is in San Francisco, which is a repertory company, where when I was in college, I wanted a thing, I did a summer at the American Conservatory Theater. I was very, very poor. And there was a restaurant that stood there called Salmagundi's, and I could never afford to eat there. But I used to stand outside of the building, and I was directly, the door of the hotel was laterally across the street. And I actually thought, gosh, if I could get, that time, that DeLorean and go back, that kid who thought he knew everything. And I could see myself standing there because it was like, it took me back. I thought, what would this older guy walk across? Now, the kid would probably call the cops. But if I could convince him that I was from the future and I was his future self, if I walked right across the street, if I had been that kid seeing some guy appear and walk across the street from this hotel, what would I say to him? And I would have said to him exactly what I just said. I thought about this. I would have said, kid, take the student loan money, buy this thing called Apple. And I thought about it. I was imagining when I was standing there doing that. And I was also imagining what I would react like if that actually happened, if there was a time-space continuum. And I saw me walk around. I don't even know.
All the time.
But I did. I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to be funny. I would love to say, cure the world, warn them about this, say that. No, selfish. No. Buy Apple, kid.
Well, that's what we learned today.
Buy Apple.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely.
Such a pleasure. You're 100% coming back. And I want to thank all the listeners. And if you could please rate and review our...
Gosh, no. Not on Yelp. Oh, my. I knew there was a... Oh, my. Here's where the troll... You did not just tell them that they can just blindly just, troll me.
They're not going to troll you.
Oh, gosh. That's
whatever. Don't rate this. Don't review it. Don't subscribe. Don't even listen to this.
Don't even listen to our podcast.
But if you want to, you can. It's your choice. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.